Thank you, and good morning, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Yesterday, we learned disturbing new details about this government's deleted document scandal in the Trillium Power lawsuit. We've learned that documents appear to have been destroyed or deleted by this Liberal government. Speaker, that's why, on behalf of our leader, Doug Ford, the PC Party has written to the Information and Privacy Commissioner seeking an investigation into what exactly happened to these lawsuit documents. This government has had 6 years, Speaker, to find the documents we know exist. The lawyers against the government provided evidence these files were deliberately destroyed or deleted. This is the gas plant scandal all over. Speaker, I ask the Premier, are we really going to do this all over again?
Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the member well knows, we can't.
I heard a member say something, I'm not sure exactly which member it was, and they'll know what I'm talking about. I don't want those kinds of references used in the heckling, and if it is, I'll ask you to withdraw, and then the second time it's used, I'll start naming people. Carry on.
Thanks again, Mr. Speaker. As said before, and as the opposition well knows, we can't comment specifically on the lawsuit from Trillium Power, as the matter is before the courts, Mr. Speaker. But with respect to record-keeping, we are committed to being an open, accountable and transparent government. We have taken action, Mr. Speaker, to strengthen the laws related to record-keeping, and we have ensured that there are good policies in place for document retention and staff training. As well, Mr. Speaker, we've worked closely with the Information and Privacy Commissioner and the Chief Privacy Officer and the Archivist of Ontario to ensure that our policies are appropriate, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary.
Back to the Premier. Well, I can tell you there's nothing appropriate about this. The former Liberal Chief of Staff to the Premier has been sentenced to jail for orchestrating the deletion of gas plant scandal documents, and this sounds absolutely identical to that. Let me read the court filings. In-house counsel for the government have refused to acknowledge or admit the destruction of incriminating energy documents, even though this has now been proven beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal proceedings. Who is this government trying to kid? The Liberals thought they were clever last time, and it ended up with jail doors slamming. Speaker, where are the documents that Trillium Power has demanded?
Where are they? Thank you. The member from the P and Carleton will withdraw, and if it's said again, I'm naming people. Carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As said before, and I'll say it again, Mr. Speaker, to the opposition, they know that we can't comment specifically on the lawsuit from Trillium Power, as that matter is before the courts, Mr. Speaker. But in 2016, Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that Trillium requested that the OPP investigate their allegations related to the moratorium on wind energy. Those allegations were thoroughly investigated and found to be unsubstantiated, Mr. Speaker. The investigation was promptly closed after the OPP found no evidence to support Trillium's allegations, Mr. Speaker. As I said before, when it comes to respect to record-keeping, Mr. Speaker, we're committed to being an open, accountable and transparent government. We've worked closely with the Information and Privacy Commissioner and the Chief Privacy Officer and the Archivist of Ontario to ensure that our policies, Mr. Speaker, are appropriate, and they have said so.
Thank you. The member from Renfrew-Nipissing Pembroke will come to order. Final supplementary.
Thank you. Back to the Premier. Well, the reason there was no evidence is because it was destroyed by the Liberals. We all know that Liberal insiders have lined their pockets from the energy file for years. That could explain this section of the Trillium Power court filing referring to their competitor. Quote, unknown publicly at the time, Windstream...
Stop the clock. Minister of Infrastructure will come to order. I might not have to wait until the first round. We'll go to warnings if necessary, and we'll do it quick. Finish, please.
Windstream Energy has hired Chris Benedetti, a senior government relations person who had close and direct relationships into the office of the Premier, the Minister of Energy and others at the time he was a campaign co-chair for the Ontario Liberal Party in 2011. Quote, the Premier was also a campaign co-chair. Records of Benedetti's communications to and from the office of the Premier on behalf of Windstream have been wiped out, Speaker. Wow. Will the Premier tell us, are the Liberals destroying evidence in this case too?
Question. Thank you. Be seated, please. Be seated, please. Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, we've taken action to strengthen the laws related to record keeping, and we, Mr. Speaker, this government has ensured that there are good policies in place for document retention and staff training. We worked with the Information and Privacy Commissioner on that, Mr. Speaker. We worked with the Chief Privacy Officer and the Archivist of Ontario, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that our policies are appropriate. And that decision, Mr. Speaker, that policy to place a moratorium on offshore wind is one that our government still believes is correct, Mr. Speaker. Ontario continues to take a cautious approach to offshore wind, which includes finalizing research to make sure that we are protective of both human health and of the environment, Mr. Speaker, because protecting the environment is something that we take very seriously. We're not going to pave over the Greenbelt, Mr. Speaker.